Hi, my name is William Henry, and today I'm covering a podcast in my new Patriot Network podcast that I've recently started. I'm going to be covering a three-part series. Today I'm going to be talking about how big business and big government prepare for the potential socialist merger under the Biden-Harris administration, and how the Biden voters have a big problem on their hands. One we can take full advantage of in the fight for America first. This past week I read an interesting article published by Yahoo News with their headline called Big Tech and Big Law Dominant Biden Transition Teams Tempering Progressive Hopes. The point of that piece was to indicate that right from the start, the planning to be Biden administration is aligning itself with large corporate interests, placing it at odds with the more Marxist goals of Bernie Sanders, AOC, and the rest of the squad that would, like to facilitate the move toward the true beginning, quote unquote, of history, which is a communist America, which I'm going to be covering more of that in my three-part series. So the story mentions by name Brandon Belford of Lyft, Mark Schwartz of Amazon, and Tony West of Uber. The use of attorneys from big national and international law firms that it also highlighted. So it points out that many of the people currently surrounding Joe Biden had strong ties with the Obama administration. And then they went on to make both a name for themselves and lots of money in corporate America. So, in what can only be considered illogical by a supporter of President Trump. He also contends that the Obama folks just weren't collectivists enough for today's progressives, right? So the Trump nationalist populist movement came in response to a failed 8 years of an Obama administration trying to fundamentally transform the American political and economic architecture as designed by our founding fathers and also codified in our Constitution. The idea that people inside that group are somehow not controlling enough to satisfy the squad or the mob at a Bernie Sanders rally seems quite impossible to Trumpians, who generally love first principles and a strong America. The confusion with that takes place because Americans have become so used to many terms being flippantly tossed around, that they have lost track of what they mean. And, as a result, it makes it harder to understand the true forces that are at work inside of our nation. Excuse me. So over the past few months, I have been talking to several people traveling from state to state, giving speeches in support of President Trump's agenda. I've also been warning people, friends, family, and so forth, that the threat we face from a Biden-Harris presidency is that the increasing power of big business is especially big tech, though not just big tech in general, but when teamed with big government, I've been telling them that the battle is not government versus business, but big business and big government versus the average American citizen like you and I. So here's the question you might want to ask yourself or others. How can it be that a Trump supporter like me and a bunch of anti-American Marxists of AOC's ilk be worried about the same thing happening in America when we have such completely different ideas as to what is the best way to organize political and economic activity? The answer lies in understanding terms and identifying the different political movements that you see and currents running through our nation. First, let me be clear, okay? Team Sanders and AOC and Team Biden and Harris are both socialist teams. The difference between them is that Sanders and AOC see socialism as a stage before a true communist society. That's the way Marx saw it and the way the socialists of his time saw it. And Biden and Harris, meanwhile, see socialism the way that it came to be seen in fascist Europe in the 20th century by people like Mussolini and Hitler, right? So in short, Team Sanders and AOC see socialism as an interim step, while Team Biden-Harris see it as a permanent resting place. The term progressive that you hear Joe Biden call himself, which has evolved over recent time and took its current meaning right around 1900, is really just a euphemism for people who want to use government to step in and manage most to all aspects of everyday citizens' lives. So in this sense, both Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden are progressives. Both favor using centralized government for engineering what takes place inside of our country. A big patch of common ground between the two is that. Now, this is why people like AOC and Sanders could get behind a Biden-Harris presidency during their tenure. Now, they agree on at least that much. So, but here is the difference. And this is why that article was so, astonishing and alarming to me. Biden and Harris are socialists in the same way as we're members of the National Fascist Party of Mussolini, and as their contemporaries in Germany. So the National Socialist Working Party, Nazis that were, formed a union between immensely powerful central government and a handful of very powerful large corporations that can be consolidated to design and implement national political and economic plans. So you will see this take shape in a Biden-Harris administration, if that were to be, in the form of climate policy that gives established companies in the automotive and energy industry generous subsidies for green initiatives, banking regulations with which only large institutions can afford to comply with, and the protection of the large social media companies known as big tech from any sort of regulatory interference in exchange for prompting Biden policies and silencing dissent. So these socialists see this as a permanent arrangement, with the principles of both big business and big government gaining power, profit, privilege, and prestige, while the masses enjoy a subsistence sort of mediocre life protected by the government. So this is the kind of arrangement about which I have been trying to tell people, and the reason why I'm putting this together for quite some time, and which also concerns the socialists over at several news outlets. Now, I'm sure these are big concerns, while exactly these big media outlets are concerned about. Now, Sanders and AOC are true Marxists. Marx never saw socialism as a permanent state. On the contrary, he saw the socialist period as one marked by official policies to level incomes and gradually take control of the means of production, coupled with a strong organized labor movement. as you hear them talk about, as a transitioning phase away from the capitalism and toward the utopian world where everyone owns everything and nothing simultaneously. Things get produced sort of magically by everyone doing their own thing, their own way, and following their talents and passions. Now, this is a kind of Woodstock, but with assembly lines, right? So Team Sanders does not see us stopping at socialism. Team Biden, however, is perfectly content with stopping at socialism and creating some sort of permanent class of American oligarchs composed of both corporate leaders and political leaders, the establishment. That's what we hear. Together, they can set goals, direct policies, decide what is and isn't permanent, all while profiting from every decision. And that's what they're all about. It is a sort of modern day feudalism where industry leaders are given various territories to oversee by the crown in exchange for loyalty and service. So this is both the threat to America and the hope for it at the same time. This past election, apparently over 78 million voters said yes to this socialism. That is a terrible thing to have happen in a country founded, on the ideas of guys like John Locke, Adam Smith, and the other great minds of the Enlightenment who believed in natural law and limited government. So a vote for Joe Biden that was given was a direct vote against America and designed as it was designed and intended. However, the good news is roughly half or more of the people who voted for socialism don't even realize they voted for it because either they don't understand it or they were simply voting against President Trump because the media told them that. So furthermore, of, let's say, about the 39 million people or so who deliberately voted for socialism, perhaps half voted for it Biden style and the other half voted for it Sanders style, right? So the first group of Biden voters, the ones who knew not what they were doing, are reachable by us, freedom-loving Americans with the right message and policy ideas. Even though this election is already done, the second group is going to be at war within itself, fighting over which kind of socialism is best that you see, with either side willing to yield to the other. So by contrast, Trump supporters, all 73 million plus that went out and voted and stood behind him, know exactly for what we voted for. We voted with the idea that America should be strong, free, and prosperous. We voted to place America and American workers first in every policy decision, not for the big corporate guys. So in short, we voted against an American oligarchy, and we voted against an American march toward communism and not. So Trump voters have clarity and purpose. Biden voters, well, they have a problem. We need to work on reaching out to half of them or more who can be engaged while keeping their hands away from the mouth of the cannibalizing socialists who are already beginning to feast on one another. Stay tuned for my next part of this. We're running out of time.